Ah, perfect. For a jolly good season like Christmas, let's talk about regret. But before we do that, I'll introduce myself since only a few of you here know who I am. Larry and Sandy know who I am, which might be a detriment, except I think they still like me. Um, and and Bob, what's your wife's name? What's it? Brenda. Okay. I only remember seeing you just a wee bit when I would come back home on leave. That was it, because you were coming to the church after I had left, I think. So, and I don't see Cindy Young. I would know her real well, um, and Sandy Burgett, who was my mom's best friend, but she's not here. I don't see her. So I'll catch up with them one point or another. I do see Cindy on a regular basis because her grandsons are going to Hillsdale, and my youngest son goes to Hillsdale. And so we make it to football games. Silence for a little bit as we think about the sad ending. But they were victorious and got to go to a state championship. It was quite remarkable, very amazing. So I see her frequently. But I was telling, Larry and I were talking, and I said that we moved here in 1973, in August of 73. I had just turned 6, and the property over on the other side of Hayesville, my dad had bought, and we put a house there, and Bob Newton and Pastor McClellan came to visit us because we had come here, and I guess Dad must have filled out one of those cards like you used to do in the day. And they came to visit us, and Dad really liked the church, and we started coming here, and that was the first that my father became a Baptist, because he grew up a Methodist. But that was all for the good. He wanted Bible teaching, and Pastor McClellan was a Bible teacher, and so we stayed for quite a while. There was some little bumps in the road in ancient history, but I don't even know if anybody knows Pastor Weber besides Larry and Sandy, but he was my pastor during my formative years. So when I was growing up junior high, all through high school, he was my pastor. That's the only, I guess, childhood pastor that I can remember and think of. And then I went off to just college for a brief moment and I had no money, and I joined the United States Air Force. And in God's good design, his intention was for me to meet Angie Moss, and I thought she was pretty sweet. And so we got married, and Dad passed away, and so we moved back to Ohio and went on another wild journey, literally, as a couple of truck drivers together. I talked my wife into driving a little express truck with me, and many people have said to me over the years, they look at her and say, "You must have really loved him." And we were newly married. How old? I can't recall the amount of years it was. It wasn't very long. We weren't married very long, and we lived in a sleeper together for 3 years. So we figured if we could stick together in a sleeper for 3 years, we could live together until death do us part. So we went to Iowa, and I pastored my first church there. And then that church was a bivocational church, and I was driving truck on the side. So also, not only did the Lord provide me with a wonderful wife, but he also had the Air Force send me to truck driving school, which had nothing to do with my job whatsoever. But Strategic Air Command had a theory that if the Russians attack, we need the planes to land out on the interstate, and you have to take your weapons out there to reload. So we need you to have CDLs, or you at least need to be trained. And they also could train us for our CDLs. So I did it. I got my CDL. My boss said, "No, Mark, you're not going to leave me, are you? You're not going to go and become a truck driver, are you?" And I said, "No way. I wouldn't want to ever be a truck driver. That's crazy talk." And the Lord had other purposes. He knew I was going to need that to provide for my family while pastoring my first church. And then in between churches, I was able to get on with Old Dominion Freight Line. And I never imagined that I would ever, when I left and I went to southeastern Ohio and I pastored my second church. And we were there for about 13 years, and I never imagined that I would ever see Old Dominion Freight Line again. And half of me or parts of me was sad because it was one of the best jobs I've ever had, was working for Old Dominion, and the attitude, the culture, everything about Old Dominion Freight Line it makes them one of the best employers in the country. And when COVID happened, and through various circumstances, I would say I was pretty well burned out, and I had to resign, and I knew the time had come, and blessedly, everything that we had accomplished, we're still in wonderful terms with the people. I still get text messages and pictures of little babies, and get to talk go to weddings and so forth. And so we have a great family down in southern Ohio. But when I resigned from ministry, I went back to AutoZone, which was I worked for AutoZone before my first church that I went to pastor in Iowa, and I didn't know what else to do, so I went back to AutoZone because I can drive a truck. So they took me on. I drove for them for a while, and little jumps here and there, and made it. I was going to go back to Old Dominion Freight Line. I'm still friends with a former coworker. We both started Old Dominion in Omaha together, and he moved back to Baltimore, and we stayed friends, and we stay in contact. And he had called me, and he said, "Mark, Old Dominion's hiring right now, and they're going to bump you to top pay right away and give you a $6,000 sign-on bonus. Why don't you come back?" I said, "Oh," and I was planning on going. The truck driving was temporary. I thought, I'm just going to go into IT. I want to work with computers. That's a fun thing I enjoy. So why not? And I said, "Why are you tempting me this way, Mark? If I go to Old Dominion, I will never do anything else but be a truck driver until retirement. That's what's going to happen." And he said, "Well, you do what you want. You think about it." And I thought about it, and I thought, I will never make that much in IT in the short lifespan I have left in the working years. And so I might as well retire as a truck driver. So I called my wife, and I said, "Honey, Mark called me, and I have an opportunity to go back to Old Dominion Freight Line. They're going to bump me to top pay." And she's just, I can hear silence on the phone, and then she says, "Mark, just stop telling me all about this right now. I'm in Walmart, and I'm going to start crying." And I said, "What?" And she goes, "Are you kidding?" She's like, that was a wonderful job, and I can't believe that." And I said, "Well," she goes, "where would we live?" And I said, "Well, I believe I'm going to have to live in Columbus, Ohio. That's where the terminals are." And I got home, did some checking on the internet, and what do you know? There's a terminal in Parkersburg, West Virginia. I said, "I tell you what, I don't want to live in West Virginia. We can live in southeastern Ohio. For you, I will stay here," because she had a job with a school as a teacher and or teacher's aide. And I said, "I'll stay here for you." She loved the area in the school and that down there. And so I looked it up, and in my mind I was thinking, "Please, Lord, not Parkersburg, please, not Parkersburg." And she's not going to watch the live stream of this or the recording. She knows this. And so I looked it up, and sure enough, it was Clearfull, and they weren't trying to hire anybody. And I said, "Oh, I dodged a bullet. I like Columbus, that'll work for me." And so I also looked, and I just pulled up Ohio, and Mansfield pops up. And I went, "What? No way. There's like a terminal in Mansfield, Ohio? Are you kidding? I not only can go back to Old Dominion Freight Line, but I can go to my hometown and live where I grew up? No way." And everything fell right into place. I was amazed again, and every time there's been a major transition in our lives, everything falls right into place, and it's like the Lord has me by the hand, and he's just walking me through the steps and just opening everything right up for us, which we're going to talk about this morning on the subject of regret. But we came home. We live in Ashland at the moment, but I'm in the process of buying my dad's property out on the east side of Hayesville, and that is, I would come in at the terminal in the evenings. when we first moved back, and I had my job with Old Dominion, and I'd see those trailers all lined up in the beautiful round circle Old Dominion freight line. It's like, God, I can't believe you let me do this. You gave me a job, the best job I ever had, and you let me move to my hometown where I grew up. You don't manufacture these kind of things. You can't plan that in your life. And he has allowed that and blessed me and my wife with that. And my kids now, they get to enjoy the life that I once got to live a little bit, because there will not be horses in my life. So they're never going to have horses. And Annie's fine with that, I think. So you're okay with that. I'll just get you a puppy or something like that. But and actually, my daughter is here, Liliana. I have to always bring at least one family member, because before everyone starts wanting to throw me out, at least I have someone who loves me at the end. And my mom couldn't make it today. That's always been her role. So Annie, you got to keep loving me no matter what happens this morning. But I was supposed to say something too. So my wife and I had a son, 1999, and that was right before we moved to Iowa, and he is now 25, 26? I'm losing track. Whatever. He's in the United States Navy, and he lives in Italy at the moment. He's got 3 more years in the U.S. Navy. He was supposed to go in the Air Force. Long story, we won't bother with that one. Everybody in our family does the Air Force, but the things shifted, and they've moved, and he's over there working on, he's on the USS Mount Whitney in Italy, and so they go to sea now and again, and he has fantastic stories, and I tell him all the time. He told me in the beginning, Dad, I want to go in the Air Force. I want an adventure. I want to do like you did. And I was thinking in my head, okay, I went to Denver, Colorado, and I went to South Dakota. That was my adventure. And the U.S. Navy has those posters. It's like the slogan was, it's not just a job, it's an adventure. I've told my son that. I don't know what the new slogan is. It's not that. But anyhow, I tell him all the time, I cannot believe you're actually living the poster. You're getting to go into all kinds of ports all over Europe. They go all out and all the way around Europe. They go all over through the Med. They get to get off the ship and go see stuff and do things. And I'm just, it's amazing. I'm not coveting his life, mind you. The Air Force is way better, but we have a good time talking veteran talk. So. And then I have my daughter, Liliana, and she lives here in Ashland with my mom. Not in Ashland, you live here in Ashland County. And she lives with my mom. That lets her have FAFSA. And so she's going to college and working somewhere around here. I don't know. But you probably have all seen her. If you go to Bueller's and you got coffee at Bueller's, then you've seen my daughter in the past. And then she was working at Bigby, and now new adventures await her. So somewhere out of the coffee world, though, right? Yeah. And then my youngest son, he just turned 16, so all of you beware, he's getting his driver's license. He goes to Hillsdale High School and just busies himself with whatever we give him to do. So that's that. That'll bring you all up to speed. You know everything about me now. So it would be nice to talk with you a little bit here and get to know you some more, but we've got to get rolling on regret, this topic. I am pretty sure everybody here at some point or another has had some regrets of some kind. You've thought, I really don't like some things in my life that have happened in the past. Let's turn to Psalm. I got to push the right button here. Oh, beautiful. Psalm 73, 1 through 3. I hope you have Bibles. If you can't read that, print on the PowerPoint. But I'm going to have the verses always be on the PowerPoint. And I don't mean to offend anyone, but a few of my PowerPoints are originally all in the ESV. And so I changed the major portion here because I'm preaching from Psalm 73. So it will read just like yours. You see some things I put in blocks. That's just the literal word from the Hebrew. So read along with me. We're going to do the whole chapter, but for now we're just going to read the first 3 verses. Truly, God is good to Israel, even to such as are of a clean heart. But as for me, my feet were almost gone. My steps had well nigh slipped. For I was envious at the foolish or the arrogant when I saw the prosperity of the wicked. Let's look to the Lord in prayer. Father, I thank you that you have given us the truth we need that guides us through life. Lord, we can remember the past. We can remember our lives as unbelievers and the emptiness, the purposelessness, the sin, the depravity, and the choices we would make. And compared to that, Lord, what we have is infinitely better and is full and rich and pleasing. And it all comes, Lord, from the gift of grace from you, and that we have coming from you to us through the word. And so, Lord, I pray that your word now will speak to our hearts and encourage us with the gospel. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. So, Mr. John Greenleaf Whittier said, "For all sad words of tongue or pen, the saddest are these, it might have been." I'm used to just doing this on my iPad. Sorry about that. I got to remember to flip this thing. So you can just laugh at me or smile when I'm telling you something and you don't know exactly what I'm telling you. So, how do you get from despair or sorrow to joy and happiness? That's what we want. We don't want to just camp on regret, camp on the despair or the discouragement that comes from regret. We want to move into joy and happiness, because the gospel brought us into a place unlike no other, into a relationship with the living God. And every day Christians need to hear the gospel, because it delivers us from ourselves, from our sin, and from the despair we'll feel because of the shame that comes from sin. So we're going to look at several things in this. I don't know, do I need to point it at that? Oops, wrong button. That's what's going wrong. Sorry. I'll get up to speed. We're going to look at 6 different things from this chapter. We're going to start with this first one. Regret is often a sin. Then we'll go to that. Regret starts in our lusts. It starts in the heart. It starts with our desires, what we crave. And then it moves on. Regret it'll drop us into bitterness or despair, discouragement. And if you've known somebody who's really focused on the past, and some of us are better at that than others, we can really see things clearly because we got a lot more information now, but we really look back and we see it, we're more introspective, and we think, wow, I really messed up my life. And some of us on the flip side are more future thinking, and we're buried under anxiety. We're not going to talk about anxiety today, but they're really the same thing on two sides of the coin. People who are bitter and regret, they're looking backwards. People with anxiety and worry are looking forward. But it's the same ultimate heart issues going on. So then we'll go to regret is uncovered in God's truth. We'll see some things of why regret is so bad and how God's truth can destroy it, can demolish regret in our lives and take us to a place of joy and praise. That's what we want, is to be able to be filled with joy and to exalt and praise God for who he is and what he does for us. So what do people regret? What kinds of things do people regret? That's what I would like to know. What do you regret? I'm not going to ask you to share that publicly unless you want to tell us what you regret, but I have a feeling that most people probably have some tragedies or accidents in life that maybe you wish, I wish that wouldn't have happened that way. For a long time, I would think after my dad's death, because they went back in for the final surgery and they didn't need to, but in the final surgery is when he got the bacteria that completely decimated his body and killed him. And I always keep thinking, if I could just go and just tell them, don't do that surgery, you didn't need to. But of course, one, I didn't even know that, and none of that, the past can't be fixed. Tragedies happen. Accidents happen. That's why they're called accidents. You don't plan them. They just come upon you. All of us, without a doubt, have regrets over sin and guilt. And then past life choices. And this is the one we're going to focus on this morning. Past life choices. Those are the things that we find we will get our regrets. On these life choices, decision making is complicated. And we'll have some fun. Decision making is complicated, and there's so many variables in life. There's so many outcomes to what you choose to do. So you got the variables to start with, and then there's multiple outcomes from those variables. How can you get it just right? How can you get yourself in a sweet spot right where you need to be so you'll be happy in the future and you'll be satisfied with your life? Everybody's searching for that. Everybody wants the perfect life. Okay, so let's think about this as a timeline. The dot in the middle of the timeline is you, right where you're at in life today, here in church. That's the present. And the door at the beginning on the left there, that's welcome to planet Earth. When you're conceived, when you're born into this world. And the door on the right is goodbye. It's the door of death that takes you on to a glorious place, I trust, for all eternity to be in God's presence. And the past is behind you, but the future awaits. When you look in the past, and if you look with regret, you're looking at something that doesn't exist anymore. And if you have anxiety and worry, that's what you're troubled with, looking into the future, you're also looking at something that doesn't exist yet. The nice thing about the future is, at least in the present, you can prepare for that. You can get ready for the future. There's a little bit more control over what's coming. But the past, there's no control. It happened. It's over. It's done. And with life choices, you might have a blotchy stain on the line. You might have something you say, I hate it when I keep thinking about that. I really don't like those memories. Or I could have chosen a different path. Things would not be quite the same with my job, or with my spouse, or with my children, or on we might go. Some persons face or focus on the past. So long as they do, change will not be possible, since no one can change the past. It is not the past that needs to be dealt with. Actually, the past no longer exists. What needs to be dealt with, though, the past can exist if you have one of these. But you probably don't. But what we want to focus on to really get at the issue of the past is what made you do what you did in the past? The lusts, the cravings, the desires. What made you make the choices you did? What made you do the things that you now regret? Look down at verse 4 through 8. For there are no bands in their death. And so that's to say that in the Hebrew, there's no pain that these people he's looking at, they have no pain in their death, but their strength is firm. Their health is strong. They are not in trouble as other men. They have an easy life, a leisure life. There's no burdens on them. Neither are they plagued like other men. They're not burdened down and weighed like most people. Therefore, pride compasseth them about as a chain. In other words, pride is, they're wearing it like a necklace. Violence covereth them as a garment. So we're speaking of arrogance, and we're speaking of power here in this poetry. These are the kind, as he looks at these people, as he sees them, the unrighteous, and he's contemplating it. Wait, this can't be right. Why do I not have these same things? I'm a righteous man. Why is my life turning out the way it is? Why do they have this? Their eyes stand or they swell out with fatness. They have more than heart could wish. In other words, they have plenty to eat. They're extra big, so much so that their eyes swell out from their face. And he's going, why am I don't always have enough to eat. They have more than the heart could wish. They are corrupt and speak wickedly concerning oppression. They speak loftily. Verse 9. They set their mouth against the heavens, and their tongue walketh through the earth. Therefore his people return hither, and waters of a full cup are wrung out to them. And they say, how doth God know? And is there knowledge in the Most High? In other words, everything about their life, they're able to just say, there's no accountability. We can do what we want. God isn't even watching. God doesn't even know. Behold, these are the ungodly who prosper in the world. They increase in riches. What you're hearing as a poet, you're hearing the lyricist as he writes this down, his heart, his prayers to God. Why is this so, God? Why do I have the life I do and others have the life they do? Now, we could focus on this as a message about envy or covetousness, but it's also very much a text that tells us about regret. As the psalmist thinks about his own life, I don't have the things that they have. I don't have health. I don't have leisure to the degree they do. And for as bad as they are, they deserve bad things to happen to them. We all have a sense of justice. We're made in the image of God. God is a just God. Even in your brokenness as a human being, you still know right from wrong. You still know things ought to, people who do bad things should have bad things happen to them. The scales of justice should always remain balanced. And when they get out of balance, somebody needs to right them. And I expect God to right them. But here are these people, even though they make bad choices over and over again, they get health. They get leisure. They don't have stress and burdens of daily needs. They're fearless. They have no accountability. They don't care what's going to happen. They can live how they want. They can have popularity. They can have prosperity. They can do anything. They have all the power they need to have. Look at my life. Look where I'm at. And so what you're really hearing through this as you read it, and I hope you meditate on this psalm often and think about it, is that the psalmist is saying, speaking truly from his heart, I don't have what I want. I could have made some different choices with my life, and it would look a whole lot different. I would have these desires that I want. In James chapter 1, verse 14 and 15, James tells us where the source of sin comes. But each person is tempted when he is lured and enticed by his own desire or his own lusts or his own cravings. These are all synonyms, perfect synonyms for the Greek word. Desire, lust, craving. Then desire, when it has conceived, gives birth to sin, and sin, when it is fully grown, brings forth death. So look at the equation here. If you like mathematics, you understand the equation. There's an opportunity comes in your life, an event, a circumstance, something happens, and you have a desire going on in your heart. And when those two things come together, an opportunity with a desire that you give into, it gives birth to sin. And then sin brings you to death. Separation. For a believer, what it brings you is a separation from a relationship with God. Not your eternal salvation, your soul, but I mean, you are not fellowshipping and walking with Him and hearing the Spirit guide you. You don't have that joy anymore. It's broken. There's death. There's a sever. A separation, a wall. Let's put some things into the equation. So we have opportunity plus desire equals sin. Everyone is tempted when he is lured and enticed by his own desires. What kind of desires are going on inside you? This is the beautiful part about regret or anxiety is it lets you start to see, oh, that's what's going on inside my heart. That's what's at work. Let's talk about a past job choice or a career choice that you made. And you really would love to have prosperity. It's at work in you, but you feel, I don't make quite enough. And maybe all of us feel that way right now. I don't make enough. Have you tried to get groceries? But you're thinking, if I would have chosen something different, because right now the medical field makes a whole lot more money, and if you're in the right place in the computer field, you make a lot of money. And look at me. I'm just not making enough money. I'm driving a forklift, or I'm working at Walmart, or I don't know, I'm just trying to think of some off-the-wall things that come to mind. Whatever circumstance you're in, there's always something better. There's always a desire for more than what I have where I'm at. And I begin to regret. And that is a sin that takes me to death. Separation from God. We'll see that when we get back to Psalms. Let's take another one. How about a marriage? A spouse. Let's say you desire and crave adoration. You want somebody to worship you. I get it. Everyone likes somebody to love you and really think you're special. But it's very easy to be unhealthy and to crave that, lust it, desire it, more than any human being should be worshiped or adored or loved. And your spouse doesn't give you what you want and you have regrets. Oh, I married the wrong one. I can think of 3 or 4 other girls, or I can think of 3 or 4 other young men. They would have been a better choice and I would get the adoration I want. And now I feel regret. And here I am at death. Now I feel separation. I don't walk with the Lord. I have a problem with fellowship. Everything's breaking down. I'm very discouraged. That's how it works in our lives. And in these moments when we feel the regret, when we say, oh, I don't like the way things are turning out, it's an opportunity to say, why? What is it that I crave so much? What do I want so much? Because when you can get to that, you can get to the heart of the matter. And now we can start to talk about how we can correct it. For me, this study on regret started in a small group. And one of the fellows was sharing how he was thinking about his life, and he made some choices that took him different places, and if he were somewhere else, he might have been happier, and there might have been more things for him that he desires. And I thought, he's talking about regret. And he's talking about things he really wants. I'm going to study this because I think there's probably a lot of people who are just like that. They think my life choices weren't the best life choices. And a funny thing I've discovered, not in everything I study, but some things I study, the Lord likes to drop me into the problem and say, I want you to get this firsthand. I'm going to immerse you in regret. I want you to feel it. I want you to hold on to it. And I want you to look at it real close from your heart. I want you to know it. And so I was, when I came back here to Old Dominion Freight Line in Mansfield, at first, as all the first drivers have to do, they get stuck in Mansfield. No big deal. I can deal with that. And then the opportunity came to go to Marion. I had never been to Marion, but I became the Marion driver. I was there for quite a while. And drove all over Marion. I can tell you they're like sister cities. There's not much different about them. But then the opportunity came to be the Ashland driver. And that was at the same time that I had this, I'm going to study regret, this, to see this person in small group, to hear these things, and people share different things. And at that same time, the Lord said, I've got the perfect place. I'm going to soak you for a little bit, and we're going to let you see what regret is like. Now, this is really ridiculous, the stories I'm going to tell you, because I have a great life. I have a great wife. I have a great daughter. She made me say that. I have great sons. I have a great salvation. I'm a United States veteran. I think that's great. I have so many things I could keep pointing to and saying, this is amazing, God, the life you gave me. Why would I ever regret? And I'll bet that's probably true for you. Why would you ever regret what God has given you? But it's so easy because we're just human and there's things we crave and desire and we lust for. And as I drove around Ashland, I started remembering everything that I would experience through my childhood growing up. And I can remember where the Dairy Dolly was. And I can remember all kinds of places. And I used to live at the YMCA and work out and all kinds of different athletic activities. I could go on. And as I drove around, the more I just felt like, now why did I not do better in school? Why did I spend so much time on the dirt bike? Why did I ride that pony so much? I'm not going to blame my parents for that. That was my own choice. Why didn't I work on my mathematics so much? My dad and I loved computers, and I think I could have done real well in that job. And I'm driving truck for Old Dominion Freight Line. Why didn't I do my math? Because little did I know through high school, when I was at MEPS in 1987, I was sitting there waiting to get some things done, and a man pops in the room, and he says, we're looking for people who want to be computer programmers right now. Anybody here want to come down the hall and take a test? And if you can pass the test, you can be a computer programmer. Well, I thought, Larry, that's it. Like, look, I got the best thing I ever wanted. I'm in the United States Air Force. I am going to be a computer programmer. I have a family friend he programmed satellites his entire career. And I thought, I might even get to go to the base I was born at Vandenberg Air Force Base. This is amazing. And he said, it's a math test. Because obviously, you're supposed to know math if you're going to program computers. Those things go together, right? And I went, what kind of math test? Oh, it's an advanced math test. I didn't do well in algebra because I didn't apply myself. I didn't even take the rest of the maths. I took the cheater maths after that and got my credits I needed for high school. I thought, oh my God, I should have just taken the test. Maybe I would have guessed right and gotten the job. Whatever the case, I was looking back going, how could I have played the fool in high school and not done my math? I could have been ready for that moment in time and changed the course. I told my wife about this too. I said, honey, can you believe this? I was telling her the story, and she's looking at me. You mean you could have gotten in the computer field instead of trucking? And I said, yeah. However, I wouldn't have ended up at Rapid City, South Dakota in Ellsworth, and I would have never met you. None of this would have ever happened. I would have had my own life going in a different trajectory. God had other plans. I am not suggesting that God made me like dirt bikes and ponies more than math, but there is a mixing of God's absolute sovereignty and control over everything, every single tiny event of our lives, and our human responsibility. You must pull them both in together. You'll never understand how they work together. They just both exist. They both run side by side. Charles Spurgeon would say it this way, they're like a railroad track. They both are running. Human responsibility and God's absolute sovereignty are running side by side off into the distance. And they never touch as far as you're concerned. You can't see them. But somewhere out in the future, somewhere they come together. Somewhere they'll make sense. And I don't know how it is that God maneuvers in our lives, and he allows the bad choices we make, like math, to really work his ultimate plan of landing me right in Ellsworth Air Force Base in Rapid City, South Dakota, to meet the best woman that I could have ever met that changed my life and made me a better person. There's always more to the whole equation of regret as we start to peel things apart and then begin to see what God is doing, which is what the psalmist is going to tell us about. So we're going to go now to regret. Will drop us into bitterness or depression. When am I supposed to end? When do you usually end? I'm sorry, I just looked at my clock on my iPad and I just waxed verbose too much. I got to keep moving here. Let's go fast. I don't want you to miss your lunch. Verse 13. Verily, I have, or we'll all have regrets. Verily, I have cleansed my heart in vain and washed my hands in innocency. For all the day long have I been plagued and chastened every morning. So he's saying, I thought about what the wicked have and the things I don't have and the choices I've made in life, and it has taken me to a place of despair. All day long I've been plagued by this. I've been chastened by it. I know, because there's always the guilt at work. It comes in to say, you really shouldn't be complaining about your life. Your life is just fine. You don't need to hang on to that. If I say I will speak thus, behold, I should betray against the generation of your children. In other words, I would offend, but he's talking about betrayal here. That's the kind of offense he's talking about. The Hebrew is talking about a betrayal of God's people. For an Israelite to say, God is wrong with the things he's done and the justice in this world, and I don't like it, is to betray the living God. It is to betray the Israelite people. You can't split them apart. They go together. When I thought to know this, it was too painful for me. In Hebrew, it was a wearisome task for me. He is completely burning himself out on the thought of what his life might have been if he could have the things, because he's a righteous man, if he could have the things that the unrighteous he sees are getting. God's truth, though, will uncover or reveal the regret and what's at work in us. Look at verse 17. Until I went into the sanctuary of God. So he's been in despair. He's burdened with weariness, and he feels the shame of the sin of it. He knows that he's guilty. And he says, all of this was wearisome until I went into the sanctuary of God. Then understood I their end. I see what's going to happen to them. Surely thou didst set them in slippery places. Thou castest them down into destruction. He threw them down into destruction. How are they brought into desolation? As in a moment, they are utterly consumed with terrors, as a dream when one awaketh. So, O Lord, when thou awakest, thou shalt despise their image. They will be like phantoms. They will just disappear from sight. Thus my heart was grieved, it was embittered, and I was pricked in my reins. He's talking about conviction. I was convicted that I would actually say, I don't like my life. I don't like how things have worked out. I was guilty. Verse 22, so foolish, or so brutish, so animal-like was I, and ignorant. I was a beast before thee. I was senseless. I was like, what was I thinking? I wasn't being rational. And usually when we're immersed in the middle of some desperate sin, it's in those moments we're being really irrational. We're not thinking it completely through and resting in the truth that God has provided us. So why is regret so bad? I mean, is it that bad? It's really bad. It's really a really bad sin. Let's see why. So in Numbers chapter, you don't have to turn there. You can just, if you can see the screen. Numbers chapter 11, verse 1 through 2. And when the people complained, it displeased the Lord, and the Lord heard it, and his anger was kindled, and the fire of the Lord burnt among them, and consumed them that were in the uttermost parts of the camp. And the people cried unto Moses, and when Moses prayed unto the Lord, the fire was quenched. God doesn't like complaint. There's really no difference between regret and complaint. And the mixed multitude that was among them fell a-lusting. The Hebrew is talking about the same thing James is talking about. They're craving things. They're desiring things. They fell a-lusting. And the children of Israel also wept again and said, who shall give us flesh to eat? They've been eating manna. We remember the fish which we did eat in Egypt freely, and the cucumbers and the melons and the leeks and the onions and the garlic. But now our soul is dried away. There is nothing at all beside the manna before our eyes. This is that irrationality. This is crazy. Yeah, you had maybe some different food to eat. There's this little thing called slavery, brick building. That wasn't good. 7 days a week, your entire life from sun up till sundown, that's all there was work for the Egyptians. But no, right now they're eating manna and they don't like it. They want to complain about it. Look what Paul says in Romans chapter 9. But who are you, O man, to answer back to God? Will what is molded say to its molder, why have you made me like this? Has the potter no right over the clay to make out the same lump, one vessel for honorable use and another for dishonorable use? Cannot the Creator do what he wants with his creation? Who are you or I to say, I don't like God the way you're doing things? I just don't like it. I've got a better idea of what my life could look like. Why did you do this to me? Remember the former things of old, for I am God and there is no other. I am God and there is none like me, declaring the end from the beginning and from ancient times things not yet done, saying, my counsel shall stand and I will accomplish all my purpose. Again, God's sovereignty is a rail that runs straight through life. He is in control of human history. If he's not, how is he going to even be able to prophesy what will happen in the future? He has to remain in control. He is guiding all things to their directed end that he has purposed. Job had a little problem with his life and how it had worked out. And God, I'm sorry, I never gave you Isaiah. So this is this thing here problem. You're going to have to forgive me. All right, so Job. Will you even put me in the wrong? God says back to Job, will you put me in the wrong? Will you condemn me that you may be in the right? Have you an arm like God, and can you thunder with a voice like his? See, again, God's truth, his word comes to speak to us in our moments of despair. Whatever the sin issue is, he comes into our life to say, listen up, I need you to think rationally. I need you to understand the reality of the world you're in, what you're doing at this moment, and what I expect. And if you do what I've commanded, you will live. But if you don't, you're going to be in despair. You're going to die. It isn't going to be pretty. That's why regret is so bad. God will destroy that regret, though. He can end it in our lives. And that's the part I hope we had to make it here. You have to at least get the good news. There is good news. You don't have to suffer with regret. Psalm 73, down at verse 23. Nevertheless, I am continually with thee. Thou hast holden me by my right hand. Now, if you ever in your life feel like things aren't going the way you want them to, this is the promise verse for you. You must cling to it and remind yourself of it over and over and over. God's got you by the right hand. He's leading you through life where he wants you to be at the moment he wants you to be there. No, when you sin, that's your fault. Your sin is because you are tempted out of your own desires, lusts, cravings, what you want. But God has still got you by the right hand. He loves you, and he's not going to let you go. No matter how far you try to stray, he is not going to let you go. Thou shalt guide me with thy counsel, and afterward receive me to glory. This is my end, ultimately. It is to go through this life with God holding my hand, ultimately through death's door into his presence, to dwell with him forever, and to return to a new earth with new heavens that shine above, and to be in awe of him, to worship him perfectly, and to fellowship with believers with not an ounce of self-purpose involved in it. No selfishness at all, no sin, no cravings that are unrighteous. There is only God and only us to dwell together. My flesh and my heart faileth, but God is the strength of my heart and my portion forever. Yes, in this life there is many things that make me fail in the day. The weariness of it, the age that's coming on. Just a little bit, I'm not as old as you, but I can feel it coming. I can see it. It's just over the horizon. 60 is just right there, and this time that decade feels older than 50 or 40 or 30. But it doesn't matter because God is the strength of my heart. He's my portion. He is my gift. He has given himself to me and I to him, and I belong to him. You belong to him. He's got you by the right hand. He is working out a life that is beautiful, even if you don't think so. But as you come into the Word and dwell in it and meditate in it, it changes your mind, brings you to see reality how he sees it, and you start to say, what was I regretting? That was foolishness. That was as dumb as the Israelites complaining over manna when they wanted to go back to slavery. I've got God. There is nothing else. Regret is often the fruit of distrust, discontent, arrogance, and self-will. It is just me saying, I want what I want. I think I could pick a better life. You couldn't possibly pick a better life. If you knew the things that God knows with his infinite knowledge, you would choose the life that he has chosen for you. And you would be right where he wants you to be, because you need that level of knowledge to know what's right. Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, another promise you need for every single day. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make straight your paths. The literal Hebrew is saying he will straighten out crooked roads. Roads can be troubling to get through when it seems like there's a complete mess out ahead of you. But if somebody comes through and just plows right down through the middle of the mess and makes it a straight path that you can see, now you've got something you can travel on with ease. And that's what God is saying here. Just trust me. You've got to trust me. You may not see what's ahead, but I do see what's ahead. I have infinite knowledge. I will straighten out the paths. You take a step. It will work. We're almost done. What in the world is that? That's a place not far from Ashland that I deliver now and then. And there is a concrete contractor on the other side of that bridge. And the first time I had to deliver, I didn't even know where it was. I saw the address, I saw the road, but I thought I better call this consignee and find out what's going on when I get here, because it doesn't look like a place I want to take a semi down the dirt road, let alone what is in front of my truck right there in the picture. And as I talked to him on the phone, the owner of this property, he said, listen, you're going to come to a bridge on my driveway. And when you get to that bridge, you're going to see it, and it's not going to look passable. But I promise you, I built that bridge, and that bridge will hold your truck. You cross the bridge, go up the hill, find the barn, and my shop there is at the top. And one of my employees will unload you. And I had no idea what I was going to find. I mean, I was like, okay, fine. I got there, and I was looking at that ahead of me. And there's only just a little bit on each side of the truck to get across that bridge. And it's just a wooden bridge. And I thought, I cannot imagine that I can cross this bridge. I don't think it's possible, humanly, looking at it. But I told myself, the guy who built the bridge told me the bridge will hold my truck. I'm going to cross this bridge because he told me. And if I end up in the bottom of the creek, he can pay the towing bill. That's what happens. And so I sent this picture to my dispatcher, and he's like, you took that truck where? And I drove right across it, and as I was crossing over and I had my window open and I looked down, and I could see the steel girders just a little bit sticking out. I'm like, the bridge didn't even budge. He built it for concrete trucks to go back and forth across, a big machinery. So I don't know why you use wood. I mean, you go that much trouble, you're a concrete contractor. Build the thing out of concrete. But it makes for a good illustration. That's faith. God doesn't ask you to step into emptiness. He is saying, I want you to step into the darkness and trust what I've told you. You may not know what's going to happen tomorrow, so you can preach this to yourself about anxiety. But this deals with regret as well. You didn't know what was the right path to take, and you still don't know what was the right path, except that right where you're at is the right place. God knew what he was doing, and he brought you here. Everything about your life demands that you just believe what God has said. And you keep moving forward where God is driving you. And cross the bridges he puts in front of you. Go into the darkness he tells you to go. And trust what he says. Because Jesus is on the other side saying, come over here with me. I've got some work for you to do. I've got some things you need to do. There's things to get done and accomplished. Come on over here. And that's faith. Faith is the active, positive response with my whole being to the revealed will of God. Whenever God speaks, he tells us something, and he just means for us to believe him, even if it doesn't seem like it's going to make sense. When Peter said, can I get out of the boat? Jesus said, get out of the boat. God spoke. He revealed, Peter, you can get out of the boat and walk on the water with me. Peter got out of the boat, and he walked on the water with Jesus. And when he stopped believing in what Jesus said and started looking at the circumstances around him, he sank like a rock. But Jesus grabbed him and said, Peter, where's your faith? Get in the boat. Let's go back to shore. God is going to have many bridges for you to cross. You got to trust him. And you may want to look back and say, I don't think I made the right choices. Trust him. He brought you here today. He's going to take you into the future. And best of all now, I hope that regret or even anxiety can be replaced with joy and praise in your life. Final verses. For lo, they that are far from thee shall perish. Thou hast destroyed all them that go a-whoring from thee. But it is good for me to draw near to God. I have put my trust in the Lord, that I may declare all thy works. The psalmist says, you know what the best thing of all is? Believe him. Trust him. And you will be able to shout the praises through all eternity to what he has done with your life, in your life, and through your life. Finally, last slide. Here's some things that you can do. List your regrets. Regret, as I said before, regret is a wonderful opportunity to find out what you're lusting for, what you desire, what you crave. Because when you can get that pinpointed in your heart, you can really start to fix bad habits and sinful choices in your life. Number 2, list the lusts that are driving your choices and failures. So as they are uncovered, start listing them out. This is the beautiful part of a local church, is you have family and friends and people who can speak into your life and say, you know, I think you crave prosperity. I think you don't want to have the level of income you have. I think you crave security. I think you crave leisure and pleasure. On and on we could go with the things we crave. But write them down. Number 3, confess and repent of sin and lusts. You just got to start saying it to God. God, I desire things, and fill in the blank. I desire these things, and it's wrong. All I need to desire is you. You are the full satisfaction of what I was designed to live for and with. And finally, number 4, kill sin in the flesh. I'm using a John Owen's title here. He calls it killing sin in the flesh, when lusts tempt you to repeat past sinful patterns. You got to come back tonight and you're going to learn about number 4. And you're going to learn about how lusts can be identified. But most of all, what we're going to learn is how God designed us to be in an actual fellowship relationship with him, to partner with him, and to be able to worship him moment by moment, day by day. Let's close in prayer. Father, I thank you for the time that we could spend together from your word, seeing how one man long ago saw the world around him and didn't like what he was getting in it. But Lord, you, through your truth and his meditations in it, brought him back to the place of total soul joy. You gave him satisfaction in knowing you. And I pray, Lord, as we feel regrets or as we are tempted to be anxious or worried about tomorrow, whatever the case, that we come back to trust in what you're doing and that you built the bridge that cannot fall. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.